to think out of our comfort zone, out of the paradigms that we're used to. And the answer inevitably lies in being able to see a vision of excellence of something happening in another context. And there's nothing more powerful than an experience that jolts us to say, what have we been doing all these days, right? And to that end, we actually have Henry joining us this morning. I'm gonna turn this into Emma and Henry. Emma is the best person who we knew we could have to moderate this conversation with Henry. She's a teacher leader, a teacher coach at heart, who believes that teacher leaders actually can change this world. Over to you, Emma, and Henry.
Thank you so much, Ram. Thank you. Henry, it's so nice to meet you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really lovely to be here. Really lovely.
I'm really thrilled to meet you. Like, I first learned about Summerhill actually surprisingly recently, just a few years ago actually, and somebody said, you have to watch this drama. You have to watch it. And I sat and I watched it, and it was a school unlike any I had ever imagined. And I saw children who were free to play, and it reminded me very deeply of my own childhood. Actually, I grew up in a village, and I spent a lot of time climbing trees, making dens, digging holes, and just generally being. And my mum really prioritized play for me, but it was incredible to see a school that honored play and honored that. But it also, like, I'd been a teacher for a long time, Henry, and it really made me question my own practices. It really challenged the way I think I saw like equality and freedom, when I saw the way that you and your school practice equality and freedom. And I think, like, I'm just so grateful that you're joining us today. I feel very honored to talk to you. And I think what we're hoping to really understand is a little bit about you and your family's journey in building Summerhill. And also just to explore with you a little bit about what does it really take to reimagine education, and what does it take to build schools that mirror the world that we want to see. So welcome to our community here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, very nice. All good conversations. Probably when we're thinking about the topic today, I think I can safely say that's it's a good topic and a very needed topic.
It's a great topic.
Absolutely.
And so, Henry, your grandfather, A.S. Neal, set up Summerhill, and he set it up at a time like just after World War I. So there'd been a lot of turmoil in the world. And my understanding is that he wanted to create a school that would fit the child, rather than being one that would like force children to do what parents and teachers think is good for them, right?
Yes.
And he wanted Summerhill to be a school that enables childhood to happen, not one that controlled childhood. And I was hoping maybe you could give us a glimpse into life at Summerhill and how a child experiences Summerhill. And I don't know if you have some photos that you'd like to share, but just give us a glimpse.
Yeah, of course. Well, basically, what I can do is I can maybe it'd be quite nice. I can talk for sort of 10 minutes or so and give you a little bit of a presentation about the school and how it runs. Just kind of short, really, just so that you gain a little bit of an idea of I say where we are today. We've been in the same place for 100 years, but the world around us has changed dramatically, and this leads very much on to the question you're asking, actually, of when looking at the change within education, what should we be looking at, and what should those changes be? So I think so maybe shall I just do that first? Shall I do a little bit of a talk now? So I'll have 10 minutes of everybody's time. Well, maybe we'll have a bit more afterwards, but we'll start with that. So I'll share my screen. If am I right to share my screen now?
Yes.
Amazing. Good. So okay. Are you all with me? Can you hear me well, and can you see things well? This is the first thing. First of all, I can't really say happy birthday to Summerhill for its 100th now, because they're now 102. But as you can imagine, for the past sort of few years, we've been celebrating the centenary of Summerhill. It's a very important time, not only for ourselves as a school, but also for the big question of education. I hope that I will be bringing some maybe, whether they're new angles to education, whether they're angles that actually you've always believed education should be, or things that education should be involving. I'm going to just share some photographs, and I'll talk over them just to give you a bit of atmosphere and a bit of an idea. So yes, my grandfather founded Summerhill School in 1921. Generally, he worked. A lot of his inspirations was he worked in a very small state primary school, and he had to put a lot of pressure on children, and he would ask himself the question, why? Who puts me in charge? Who gives me the right to direct or tell a child what to do, or even punish a child, and things like that, really. Now, Summerhill is built very much on, well, the founding philosophy is freedom, not license. So you're free to do as you want to at Summerhill, but you're not allowed to infringe upon other people's freedom. So it's not absolute freedom, turmoil and everything going, and the survival of the fittest kind of situation. It's, we're all living as a community. We all have to kind of take responsibility, and we all have those wonderful freedoms. And the main reason for this was to allow children to breathe, to allow childhood to happen, to allow children to instinctively, intrinsically fulfill their needs. Fundamentally, as you're going to see through quite a few of these photographs, fundamentally it's done through play. And play at Summerhill School is absolute. It's absolute free play. We don't direct play. We don't get involved with play and turn it into a learning experience. Play belongs to the child, and it has done for 100 years at Summerhill. So this is so that, as I just mentioned, children can fulfill their needs. They can follow their interests. One of A.S. Mill's famous quotes is, "To find happiness is to find interest." And this is a very important part. It's not necessarily just interest as in, I'm interested in playing music. It's also interest as in, what is it that, you know, being instinctual, what is it that I want to do at the moment, especially with interlinking with friendships and the social and emotional development that happens. The freedom that children have in that way means that they fulfill what they need to fulfill. Now, in exactly that way, at Summerhill School, we prioritize social and emotional development. We do that fundamentally by giving 100% choice of whether children go to lessons or not. And that is all the way through. I will just explain that again. So from the age of 5 years old to the age of 18 years old, children at Summerhill have 100% choice of whether they enter any single classroom or learning environment at all. Now, as you can see from some of these photographs, we've got a very fruitful, a very vibrant learning community. But actually, what is also very fundamental is that children will just play, and they will play, and they will play, and they'll play. A lovely quote from my mother, who has been the principal of Summerhill for now nearly 40 years. A lovely little quote from her. She said that, you know, when you come into Summerhill School, the first thing you see is children playing, and they'll play and they'll play. They'll play the right way up. They'll play upside down. They'll play inside out. They'll play all over the place. And they play like kittens tumbling out of a box. And it's very much the kind of atmosphere that is important to portray here. And the other thing, obviously, because we give the choice whether children go to the lessons or not, it means they have time. and they have time to do this as much as they see fit. Trust me, in 100 years, there's never been one moment where we've turned around and gone, right, I think that child's been playing for too much now. We're going to have to stop them from playing now. They've they've had way too much fun. Oh no, we've had way too much fun and play. We're really going to have to start limiting that play. Trust me, it's never happened in 100 years. I can say that. So just quickly going back to the freedom not license, what this means is we have freedom from ourselves, and we have responsibility to ourselves. We have freedom from other people, and we have responsibility to other people. We have freedom from the community, but we also have responsibility to the community. We've actually got to run, as you can see in some of these photographs, we have democratic meetings. We have them twice a week, and they're a place where we all get together. Absolute equality. We all have an equal vote, whether you're 5 years old or whether you're a 46-year-old deputy principal of Summerhill. And everybody has that freedom to be a part of the conversation, to discuss things, to bring up topics or whatever. We create laws. We self-govern our community, our day-to-day living within the community. And this is in all aspects. We do conflict resolution. I can talk a bit more in detail. Maybe I'm sure some people will ask some questions. We'll have a bit of Q&A later. But we also create laws as well that helps to clarify boundaries within living within a community. So, for example, we've got a trampoline, and we have many laws. One of them being you're not allowed to wear shoes on the trampoline, obviously. The next one being that you can bounce on the trampoline for as long as you like, but if someone else comes and asks for a go, then you have 5 minutes, and then you have to let someone else have a go. It sounds very simple, but it needs to be very, very simple. It's designed by children, for the community that we live in. Okay, so I'll talk just a little bit now. I will just say we're an international boarding school. Now, we do have day pupils as well, but fundamentally, I'd say, 3/4 of our pupils board at the school. We offer, when it comes to the learning environments, we offer the national curriculum, GCSEs, at Summerhill School, the same as around the whole of the UK. But children still choose whether they go to them or not. Now, so what this means is that you get the first thing that happens when children come to lessons, they come because they want to be there. They come with motivation, they come with enthusiasm, they come with interest, because they've had the choice. And so that's a first and fundamental, a very important part of what happens within that. Generally, I would say probably 80 to 90% of all of pupils at Summerhill School all will go on, will take GCSEs, and will go on to college, and will go on to university. And actually, statistically, we have actually a lot higher compared to the national average of pass rate at Summerhill School. And generally, because of the relationship they have to the learning. As I said before, it's about their own interest. They're bringing it. They're having that wonderful independence and control of their own lives, really, and making their own decisions about their own lives. There we go. That's a snippet, anyway. I'm sure that there'll be some more questions. I'm sure there'll be some more questions, and we'll talk about it in a bit more detail. But I hope that will paint a little bit of a snippet, and hopefully some of the images and photographs will give you a bit of an idea of the atmosphere at Summerhill. First of all, we always say you should try and come and visit. If you're ever in England, please give us a ring and come and visit, because it's a wonderful, wonderful place. And yeah, so I think that's about it for now.
Thank you so much. Those pictures really made me smile, Henry. I was watching the little boy in the aeroplane, and my son has just started making cardboard aeroplanes of that scale. At home. It was really beautiful to see.
Make sure that yeah, big, and you can ride around in them. That's the way forward. Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Henry, when you're sharing, like, I mean, the choices that you've made at Summerhill, they're really bold, right? In terms of like students not being like having that freedom to choose whether to attend a class, for example, is I mean, I don't think, I mean, we used to stand on the corridor bringing children into the classroom at school. Like, it's a very different approach to learning. Like,
it is. I mean, I think that first of all, I'll just quickly add to what you just said there. It is bold, but actually it's only bold in a world that we have created around us now. You know, what A.S. Neil wrote is he wrote and said that, you know, in starting Summerhill, we had to remove all instruction. We had to move all societal expectation. We had to move religious guidance. We had to move moral training. And what we had to do is have to have a complete belief in the child. And actually, that's fundamentally what we do have. And really, it's quite easy to lose that in the world the way it is today. That we have to put pressure, we have to be successful, we have to learn, we have to achieve, we have to, you know, the fight, the competition, and all of these things is actually what makes it hard to think of it, to think that it's bold. But actually, I believe it was bold. I believe, especially if you think in 1921 and what A.S. Neil, how education was then, even though it's not very far as it was today, as again the importance of the reimagining education. But yeah, I think he had to step back, and he had to look at what education is, and he had to look at the child and think, right, something's wrong here. Children have got what they've got, and they've got the power to do it, you know. So sorry, I interrupted you a bit.
No,
but anyway,
no, please. No, it really resonates, you know, like, so I have two small children, and they go to a very beautiful school actually. And Aidan was, I remember a few years ago, he was drawing, and he wanted to draw a train, and he was like, "Mummy, draw the train." So I drew him the outline, and he was drawing, and he took it to school, and his teacher took me aside, and she was like, no, you don't be doing this, please. And she was like, you let it be his creation, you let it be his voice, his painting. So I had to step back, right? And she's like, just move away, just move out the way. And I let him paint. Well, I let him, but he certainly painted, right? And I asked him, he was really creative, and I said, what have you made, Aidan? And he looked at me and he's like, flies dancing. I was like, but it was an incredibly powerful moment for me as a parent, of like the need to step back and also to let go. There were beliefs that I was holding, maybe that I wasn't even aware I was holding around, you know, that I know my child needs me to like,
I know better.
I know better.
If I don't do something, the child won't learn. And if I don't do, the child won't do.
And I'm curious, like, you have, I'm sure, like, had many adults, I'm sure, joining your community at Summerhill over the years. What are some of the beliefs that you've seen maybe teachers or parents have to let go of a little bit in order to be able to kind of lean into this approach and this philosophy?
Yes. Well, I think a lot of what you've said, first of all, I think at Summerhill, just to give you an extra little bit of background, I've traveled the world doing talks about education, helping people start up schools, doing workshops and all sorts of bits and pieces. So I've seen, and obviously Summerhill is a world, I mean, it's inspirational to so many people around the world. But starting schools similar, but also teachers within traditional education, parents, really anybody who has any interactions with children. To a certain extent, and so I've seen it. I've seen it from many different angles. At Summerhill School itself, a lot of the people who come to work at Summerhill, they know of Summerhill. They're coming because they get it. But at the same time, it's very important to mention that we sometimes have adults who are at Summerhill for 2, 3, 4 years, and still finding new things and sort of being taken back to the classroom again and going, wow, I didn't, you know, there is a lot to it. And I think that in a few things. So first of all, actually, what you said actually touches on a few things. Obviously, the parent relationship. There's then the adult relationship. And then there's the teacher and within education relationship. And all of those can come at really quite different angles. Obviously, the parent relationship has a huge bond, a huge journey that has taken place. And so sometimes for a parent to actually sort of do exactly as you did and sort of go, yeah, actually, I can actually just step back and leave, and not complete, we're not talking about, right, okay, I'll tell you what, you're 3 years old, it's time for you to move into your own flat now and take no, that's not what we're talking about. But to let the child become an owner of their own life and their own decisions and their own creativity and their own journey. There's a lovely one that I'll just another lovely quote that I'll mention from what you just said there. From A.S. Neil wrote a quote. He was walking with Bertrand Russell, and this is a true story as well. He was walking with Bertrand Russell, and he said it was at night, and he said, the difference between me and you, Bertrand, is that if we were working together with a child, you would be explaining to the child the universe and all of the intricacies of the stars and all of the science around the universe, and I would be just being quiet and leaving it to the child's imagination to go where they want. And to a certain extent, there's something important in that. It's not saying, obviously, for the whole life you should never make those communications, of course not. But it's very important to understand the value to the child for them to be intrinsic and instinctual and following their own needs and having those wonderful times. And obviously, it's all in play. Obviously, that's just what they do. But it's a very important time that even the creativity, why is it that they're doing something? What is their relationship to what they're doing? Is it a positive relationship? Mm-hmm. If you start to put expectations onto a child, then they can start to feel that what they're doing is not theirs anymore. It's not guided by that. They're not listening to them. That they might do things for the wrong reasons. They might do things because there's expectation and it's not theirs anymore. And then their relationship with it is, there's a lot of nuances within it. Of course there is, but fundamentally, giving an opportunity for children to breathe and to take time and to be. Obviously, that doesn't mean that they're going to be running around like nutcases. That's what they do. They play. That's all that kittens coming out of a box. That's what I'm saying. So I think things like that's very powerful. I will add the teaching element. Our teachers are astounded. They come and they're sitting in the classroom and they're going, I'm with a class of children who want to be here, who want to learn, who are thirsty, who are interested and have got all of these wonderful, just lovely energy about being there. The motivation, the choice. And so our teachers, sometimes they'll come and they'll think, right, we need to think very alternatively, and we need to, because Summerhill's very alternative, and we need to come up with new teaching styles and new ways to interact with the kids and get the kids interested. And the kids just are not interested. They just, look, I'm here. I'm up for it. Just give it to me. I want to learn with you. Let's do this. They take it seriously. They're in there. They're ready. But living in a community with children of equal rights is it's different. It's very different. A child, having a 7-year-old come up to you and saying, "Actually, can you get out of my room, please?" All right, yeah, okay. Can you be quiet, please? Because we're playing over here and you're interrupting us play. Can you get out of the lounge because we're all right, which is.
And I think this is
the most beautiful
practice,
thing.
Right, as well for an adult. So it's hard. It can be hard for an adult to practice that, right? To really hear and to really respond to that.
Well, we now, I'll just quickly add this. We've started a non-profit called the A.S. Neil Summerhill CIC, and we do training for adults. We're doing an online course at the moment called The Role of the Adult, and in facilitating a happy and fulfilled childhood. And it's a 10-week course, and we're working with people around this topic at the moment. And I mean, it's a big thing, because not only is it a big thing to the person themselves. Now, some people might really get this, and they might be amazed, and it just straight away. But the role of the adult is not always on just about you. We all know that. If you're working at a school, there's expectations from the school. You need to do specific. Whatever those expectations are that are put upon you. Obviously, you can't always create non-compulsion in a lesson. So how can you create a classroom that is more equal, that has more flexibilities, that has some lovely time for kids to sort of be involved, and for it to be a bit self-directed, and to have some sort of, how can you implement those sort of things into your classroom? And so this sort of a thing is what we work on a lot at the moment. In supporting people around these things, because exactly as you said, people don't, it's not quite so easy. It's a bold, as you said, it's a bold thing to make that change. But actually, so it can be, depending on what world you're surrounded by, it can be a huge thing. Yeah, and sorry, I do this quite a lot. I keep on. You're going to have to just shut me up. I'm sorry, everybody. Oh, when is he going to stop? Oh, you see, no, it's okay now, because now that I've just done that, I forgot what I was going to say. So we're all right. We're good. We're all right, everybody. It's okay. I'll come back to me in a few minutes. It'll come back to me.
And I think, Henry, I am curious to understand, like as children go through this kind of education at Summerhill, like what is it that you believe is kind of the goal of education? Because I feel like, I don't know, I walk around classrooms and I wonder that many times, like I wonder, like, what is it that person believes is like the goal of education? Like when I see their practices, and I'm curious, like when you look at, like, you're working to create a world where children, like, really know themselves, and we have a lovely phrase here, like the andakados, the friend inside. And I feel like when I watch some of your videos, where I feel like you're really helping children understand the friend inside and who they are inside. And I'm wondering, like what does it change for children, and therefore what do you see as the goal of education, and in what way is that similar and different from maybe a more conventional system?
I mean, I think first of all, the direct flip needs to happen. It comes back to what you said at the beginning of, instead of making the child fit the school, we make the school fit the child. What we need to do is we need to do that with the world. Instead of making the child fit the world, which we seem to have made in a complete mess, what we need to do is we need to grow the world from our children, and we need to actually grow the world back in connected with humanity again. And back, I mean, we can see this with there's all these amazing documentaries about the wonderful nature that I'm sure people would have seen, about fungi and all of these wonderful things that these new discoveries of how the world and community and how the world is developing, or how nature does things. And we've just completely disconnected ourselves from it completely. And I think that it's a very powerful, important thing. So I would say that that's the flip. When you look at children in a free environment, it makes you understand where the priority should be. And there's never a single thing inside me that should ever say that we should take that away from children as the future of education. In every way, we should be giving that back to the children. And then we grow from there. It's the whole of society has created a system that in every aspect of the world, it takes childhood away from children, from us. Sorry, I'm going to say us because we've all been one. I mean, generally, we've all had that opportunity, really. Whether we like it or not, it's compulsory to all of us. We get the opportunity to be a child, and it should be a happy and fulfilled childhood. And so for me, that's I think that's a really important part of it. And what Summerhill does, there's a few things around this which I feel is very important. First of all, the school responds directly to free and natural childhood. So we've got class 1 and class 2 are our sort of primary division at Summerhill, and they're both open space. They're open space so that the children, and actually the woodwork, for example, is open space, and even the art room has got some open space time. And what it means is that free play, children can be off in their beautiful world of imagination, killing dragons or whatever it is. Probably not killing dragons, actually, normally quite the opposite. Fighting orcs, yes! Anyway, whatever those things are that children, that's where they're in as a standard. And then they come into the classroom or the woodwork to build a sword, or quick, panic, there's a dragon outside and I need a sword, quick. You know, that's the kind of woodwork we like. Childhood becomes then fulfilled. That element of them being little and playful and bumbling around as they do, it becomes fulfilled, and they grow very naturally then into what my grandfather called the gangster age, which is sort of 10, 11 and 12, where they like to push boundaries a bit and be a bit naughty and sneak out at night. Yes, come on. Another very lovely part about childhood as well. Slightly annoying, but really lovely. And then they go into their teenage times, and we all sort of think, okay, well, if you don't teach children to learn to read and write, why would they learn to read and write? Well, the answer is, of course they would learn. Why wouldn't they? I mean, it's the most wonderful thing to learn how to do. It's just that they will do it in their time. So what kind of happens is you get this lovely individualization of education, but you then get this very natural growth. They then very naturally, they start to take on those responsibilities. Actually, I'm going to start running the school a bit and taking, helping the littler kids. And I've got to think about my GCSEs. I've got to think about when I'm going to college after and university. People think that we have to force children to get to that. But again, it's natural. They want to do it. They may not all want to become space scientists. They might just want to become a road sweeper or work in a supermarket. But in the end, if they're happy, that's what's most important. And we all know that we've got the other jobs that need it as well anyway. So it's a very natural thing. And the other thing I'll just quickly say about Summerhill that for me is a very powerful thing is that what we often do when we're reimagining education, we're going, so what education system should we create? The problem is, by the time you've actually created that education system, you need to create a new one. And we're all scratching our heads and going, right, we just created that education system, which is really good, but we got a bit of a problem now because we need a new one. The kids are changing, the world's changing really fast, but we don't know how to deal with it all, and we need to change it again. The beauty of Summerhill is because it's directly connected to childhood, it evolves with the children. So it evolves with humanity. So on a day-by-day basis, the school is changing. Kids will bring something else to the school. They'll talk about, iPhones. I mean, how are we going to deal with that in schools? You give it to the kids to deal with, and they'll deal with it because they're the ones who are playing with it. They know it better than all of us anyway. So what you're doing then is you're creating schools that naturally evolve with humanity, not with what society wants, not with we want huge scientists to do, and we want this, and we need education, and we need to change and all of that sort of thing. That will grow from us. And it will get to the same place eventually. Trust me on that one. We've got space scientists. We've got all of nearly every possible type of person who, career opportunity who's left Summerhill. It's happened. They've doctors, scientists, with everything, absolutely everything. But it will be in touch. What we're doing is we're then making it almost more organic, holistic. We're making education a part of humanity again and fueled by humanity rather than forcing that for a world that we've created, that we're not even looking at it and going, we actually really love the world we've created. There's lots of amazing things, but there's a lot of it that we all know is a problem. So, sorry, I'm going to stop. I promise. I won't say anything else.
I'm rapidly making small notes, Henry, on what you're sharing. But like, I think this idea of like being really rooted to the children and what, like following them, no? Not trying to control them, but like following them is incredibly beautiful. And I feel like that maybe is at the core of, I was going to ask you, like, what does it take to reimagine education? I think what I'm hearing is like it takes being deeply connected to children and spending time with them, observing them, being with them, like enables you to follow them and to like kind of co-create that environment with them that enables the education to develop. No?
Yes, there's a few things of that. So first of all, I'll say one thing that's really important is I think what we need to do is we need to, actually people will often say you need to take a step back before you can take a step forward. And I'm actually thinking we need to take 2 steps back before we can take 1 new step forward. The problem is it's about the new step. It's about us looking at what we're doing and thinking, right, we've actually got to Etch-a-Sketch here. I'm sure if there's lots of teachers, we all know the Etch-a-Sketch thing. We need to look back a little bit, and we need to take that little bit more of a step back, because education, unfortunately, however many 100 years ago, and it not changing, how we all talk about evolution, and yet the thing that's evolved the least is education. In fact, it's gone in the opposite direction. In that reason is why we need to take 2 steps back, and we need to go past that, and we need to then take a new step forward. And for me, that's a mentality I think is really important. I think you're right about getting kids involved in bits and pieces like that. But there's something important I want to say about that. Summerhill and A.S. Neil said this, and for me, all my years involved and anything of my involvement with children and education would say this as well, is that childhood belongs to the child. And we need to be very careful that we don't make young adults of children and start to put the responsibility of education, the future of education, on our children. Actually, that's our job. That's the job that we need to be aware of what's going on. The children, obviously, they will be, and they'll have lovely ideas. I'm not saying we don't get people involved, but sometimes childhood, and we've seen this a real lot, and I've seen this a lot in working with other people who are setting up schools. We've seen a lot that people, in creating equality, what they do is they bring kids the responsibility of the world. They bring kids up to us, and they then create what my grandfather called young adults of children. And it's important not to do that. It's important to make sure that when children are making decisions, it's about trampolines, because that's actually what they care about at the time. They will care about other things, but they need to, when you're talking about a fulfilled childhood, the child needs to be connected very much to their actual childhood instincts. And thinking about the politics of the world is not what I would put in thinking, I'll tell you what, all 8-year-olds definitely need to know about the politics of the world, you know. So I think, sorry, just in saying that, just to be mindful in, you know, it's really lovely to involve kids with that. But so I think it's us having those conversations, things like this, looking again and thinking, okay, so what is education? What should it be? What should it become? What should it do for children? What should education be giving to children? We talk about opportunity. Of course, it should be a place of opportunity. So create a vibrant, wonderful place that's got lovely things happening in it, but give freedom to choose, so the children can actually sit on their bums and do nothing for a bit, because that might be what they need. So, you know, I hope I'm supplying some things that are just fueling your guys' thoughts. Really, you know, the other thing I'll just quickly say is we're never saying every school should be like Summerhill or every school should be a Summerhill. We don't want to create a chain, but we want people to learn from the 100 years. that Summerhill has had, and from the phenomenal research, the phenomenal writings, the phenomenal experience that Summerhill has got around the topic of education.
And I think, as you were sharing that you've been working with different systems and different schools now around the world. Like in India, in the system that we work in a system that's very anchored in standardized assessments, where students don't get a lot of choice, especially when they're younger in their subjects or their curriculum. There's a lot of pressure for teachers to cover syllabus, a lot of pressure for students to recall factual information. We also work, you know, at Teach for India with children and young people for whom, you know, passing those assessments, passing those exams is a way of like accessing opportunities for themselves that would like really like offer like more for their life, you know, more opportunities for their life and potentially move them out of poverty, for example. And I think many of us feel like a tension between knowing and seeing this, like feeling that there's a need to reimagine the system and wanting to do things differently, but also feeling constrained or struggling with knowing that our children also need to succeed in the system. This child today needs to succeed in that system. And I'm curious, like how different, like you've been working with some different people in different schools, like how have people approached that, and how do you guide people when maybe they don't have like the complete freedom that you maybe have at a Summerhill? Like how do you guide them to like even begin to explore these ideas?
Yeah, of course. A few things. So I was involved, I have been actually still quite involved with a movement in India called the Oasis movement. And they fundamentally base a lot of their ideas on A.S. Neil and some other great thinkers. And fundamentally, they work on social and emotional development. Now, the well-being of the child, I think what you've said, obviously, and it's really important to emphasize this, it's very, very important. There's a lot of children out there who really do, they need to have access to better education as a whole. And it's very important, you know, when you're sort of thinking about being able to get themselves out of poverty, you know, yes, absolutely, though, education is a very powerful and important thing. So I'm going to put it there. I'm not going to take it away because that is very important. I think that what I would add into another little box next to it is the social and emotional well-being, because a lot of these children who are in poverty, who are having a difficult time like that, it's not necessarily just them coming out that's going to solve the problems. We all know family issues. There can be a lot of things that those situations can provide. And so still in this, it was very interesting when talking with the connections of Oasis movement, they still prioritize social emotional well-being, because when a child is actually, when they've managed to solve some of those issues that are in the past, when they've managed to alleviate some of those things, now then it puts them on, it gives them a better foundations that then leads very nicely into that other box. So it's really, you know, we've often said this about Summerhill, is that if we had a Summerhill in a country having real difficulties in poverty, then probably all the children would go to all of the lessons. Of course they would, and that's fine. It's not, again, it's not saying that shouldn't happen. But there's a lot of very powerful things around the social emotional development that can also happen. In the Oasis movement, they do these camps for sort of 2 or 3 weeks where kids go and they're having meetings, they're discussing things, they're sharing, they're building relationships with themselves, they're building relationships with other people. You know, those are foundational to life. Whatever you do, as much as you can put how important it is that they get an education, that other box, that other stuff is still even more foundational from my perspective, from our perspective. But I'm not taking away, it's really important that people, I hope people will understand, I'm really not taking away from it, because I do understand that. But when you're creating that environment, sometimes there might be kids who are fine and they just want to learn and they want to run and they want that opportunity. And then it's the most wonderful and powerful thing. But in those moments where actually they've got some deep trauma. They've got something that they need to deal with. And that might come out in anger. That might come out. They might need to feel loved. They might need to feel supported. And maybe giving that education will help a bit with that. But maybe it won't. And so the focus should still be on, well, as A.S. Neil said, on the whole child, making sure that the social emotional well-being is being seen to, is being nurtured. I will just say something as well, which is very powerful, is with all of the work we're doing with the A.S. Neil Summerhill CIC and the course that we're offering, fundamentally what we put it down to is good relationships. Being very sincere, having very deep and very loving and very caring, unconditional love for the child to feel in a world where actually the teacher's in a classroom and they've got to create competition because that's what the school system wants and that's what the government system wants. You can relate to what you've got, which is the most powerful and beautiful thing as a human being, is you can relate to that child and you can create wonderful relationships with them. So even in the hardest situation, creating wonderful relationships is a very powerful thing. Trust, sincerity, being honest to yourself, being you with the child, for them to see some of your weaknesses, for them to see your strengths, for them to start to trust you and for you to understand and listen to them and trust them and be, and to give them time and space but also to feel that there's that connection. It's a very powerful thing, very powerful thing.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with a lot of our classrooms here as well, like fellows really being able to create that and what that shifts for children and their learning, actually. But interesting, I think something that can be done no matter the system, no? Around, like, what are the other external things that can happen, no?
Very nice, because everybody's got that. All you need is two human beings of any age, and then you can work on relationship. In fact, you can even do relationship with yourself as well. Looking in the mirror, how are you doing? You're looking good today. Anyway, sorry. But there's so much that can happen literally just in those situations.
Like through that relationship.
Sometimes you're looking as a teacher and you're thinking, there's a lot here I can't help. So where can I improve things? And even sometimes in those situations. But kind of putting all of that together, I know, when you do the reimagining of education, we all know it's a big discussion. We all know it's a big topic. We all know that it's one that everybody's talking about at the moment. It really is. So sometimes even the little things that you can do in a situation where you're a teacher and you're thinking there's not much I can do here, there's always something. And relationships is a very beautiful and powerful one. Because I
think that lens is really powerful as well, Henry. Like, it can sometimes feel very overwhelming, especially for some of our young teachers. But I've been here now 12 years, and sometimes it does feel really overwhelming with like the challenge of what we're trying to do. And I think just that lens of maybe I can't do that, but I can do that, and I can start here. And I think that's also really powerful now.
Yes. Well, the solidarity, the fact that I think also knowing that many people around the world have got this same, they're moving in this direction. We're not all alone. And that's also, I think, especially when you're in the classroom and you're having difficulties in a real hard school. I've spoken to many teachers who have got to a point where they're just like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know. Then those little seeds of wonderful relationships and the wonderful things that can come out, especially with kids, it's just really lovely. You can create some really great situations. And there's just lots of people around who are doing this. It's really, really powerful.
And Henry, you've been celebrating your centenary. You were saying, it's been 100 years. Your family has been building this really truly democratic school, and I know you've faced resistance through your history, and most notably, I think, obviously your battle interaction with Ofsted. And I think as a teacher, I was rooting very deeply for you through that process. But for those of you that don't know, Ofsted is the UK regulator of schools, and they really challenged Summerhill and Raleigh. But I feel like the whole weight of the Department of Education was really challenging the work that you do, and it must take an unwavering conviction to be able to stand up to that challenge and that resistance. Where do you find, and where do your family find that energy to sustain like your conviction and your energy for the work?
First of all, in the children of Summerhill. Yeah. You know, when you see the kids having the education that they're having, when you see, and this is what I say about, I'd love you to come and visit sometime if it is that if you're in England, you know, do be in touch, because just seeing the place and having this place that's got such calmness to it, so calm. It's a place of learning and inspiration and energy and fun and play and love. Oh my God, there's so much love there. And there's annoying as well, of course there is, but with love behind it, it's brilliant. But it really is, you know, and so I think that when the first part of it would be that. I remember Zoe saying it. So my grandfather passed away in 1973, and my grandmother then took on the school. And as she started to get a bit older, there was a moment. My mother was not interested in becoming a part of Summerhill School at the time. She did horse riding and teaching people how to do horse riding, and that's what she wanted to do. And she started to have a family, and she had all of us. And then there was this moment where Ina, my grandmother, was saying, I can't do this anymore. And my mother was saying, well, I've got to take it on, because if I don't, it's going to close. And I want it there for my kids, let alone for the message that it gives the world. I think my personal interest, I was a pupil at Summerhill throughout my time. Yeah. I then taught music there for 10 years plus. And I've been the deputy principal now for 12 years. I think from my side of it, actually, it's situations like this, really. I think it's for me, it's what I feel Summerhill can share with the world. And not only that, but also how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the world are still touched and inspired by Summerhill. And I say need that help. Kind of love to have the fact that Summerhill is still alive and that's still there. There's some phenomenal projects around the world, some really amazing stuff. And so I'm not taking it away from those. If anything, I'm adding to it. I'm fueling because you know, we had in August of last year, we had the Summerhill Festival of Childhood, which was a huge event celebrating 100 years of Summerhill, but celebrating the inspirations that A.S. Neil has given the world and celebrating all the amazing work happening. Those change makers, those people who are really, really working hard to make those changes. And we had 1,000 people, and we were all out in the middle of a field down the road, and it was amazing. It was a phenomenal event. And it's things like that where you start to, and I mean, when I came to India, I did a tour in India for 3 weeks, and I was just astounded by the people who were they just were working so hard on making those changes. And so really, it's all of you, really. That's where the people that are actually on the front line, who are looking at where the problems are and wanting to make changes and seeing which direction those changes should be and figuring out how those changes can be made. That's for me. I mean, that's the inspiration. It really is, you know.
Henry, thank you so much. I'm going to pause us there and maybe just invite, I know, like our audience, just if there are questions that you would like to ask Henry, and just to kind of dive into some of these themes even more deeply, of like some of the things that he's provoked in you through this conversation. So we'd love for people to come off mute, share your questions, and I'm sure Henry would be happy to respond. Of course,
always. Yeah. It's always a quiet moment where everyone's thinking,
not me.
Who's going to ask the question first? Who's going to be the first person to ask the question? And then they all come, and that's it. There's no stopping them then. But don't worry, it's okay. This is the quiet moment.
So we have a couple of questions from Vijay. Vijay, do you want to voice out one of yours?
Thanks, Ram. Just to open the floodgates, I guess, Henry. You could pick one of these questions. The first one is, how do you witness like the graduation of these students at Summerhill when they make contact in the real world? I know they do some of it through the GCSE curriculum, so it's not completely alternative. but how do they kind of integrate with the world at university and beyond, and anything you prepare them for in that sense? The second one is a blasphemous question about impact. I'm not an educator. I work in fundraising, and I'm very curious actually if how do you think about qualifying these inputs? And you know the impact this is having, all these inputs on these students. How do you think about qualifying that or quantifying it? And does it even matter when you think about the impact of your work?
Interesting. Okay, yes, what I'll do, if you don't mind, I'll do the first one, and then I might ask you about the second one again, just because often I forget things. I normally do one question at a time because I get... Anyway, yeah, so the first part would be the qualifications. It's really important. We've always said this at Summerhill. We don't want to come away from what the world uses, because our fundamental thing is that our children need to be able to walk the path that they want to walk, and we need to be able to support them with that. And so if we had the most ideal situation, I probably would scrap GCSEs within a second, but they are the qualification that's used. And so it's very important that we make sure that, to the best of our ability, we're supporting the child to be helping them get on to the next step of education, university, whatever that journey is. So that's really important. That's the first thing that's very important. I think the second thing to add with this, which I guess is I've put down as being more fundamental really, is the life skills that the children gain at Summerhill. The negotiation, the tolerance, the learning how to live and work with other people, and learning how to deal with difficult circumstances when they come up, learning how to be very spontaneous, how to trust yourself, how to be able to deal with the emotional situations that come up in all of our lives, that we know that the world is, our human lives are not always a simple journey. And whatever world we're creating, that is the case. Of course it is. So I think that's a very powerful and important part. You know, people often sort of say, you know, children who come to Summerhill who have all the freedom and have equality, and then they leave and go to a world where it's unfree and it's unequal. How do they deal with it? And is that a good thing? Well, it's actually, it arms them. It gives them the best tools they could possibly have, because they understand these things intrinsically. They understand these things to a very deep level, and they understand how to live their lives, and I think that's and then also that connected into the work and the career choices and the life choices we're going to make that are also big as well. We all know that whatever path we choose, there's always going to be a lot of struggles with it. And I think especially, you know, if it is that people are they've got very, very high ambitions and expectations of themselves, then it's going to be a big journey. And so the most important thing is that they have those real life skills as foundational. And so it really is the whole package. But we really, exactly as you said, we don't take away, we don't sort of say, you know, do things in alternative ways, and it's not that jump. If anything, we're working to go from the wonderful free childhood that I was talking about, the kittens playing out of a box, to taking GCSEs, going on to college and university, and feeling confident and strong and comfortable and well-balanced human beings. You know, that's where our goal is really. So the other one, just help me a little bit with it. You're talking about how we value these things, or how we sort of quantify these things. Do you mean like how we feel that we should sort of register these things? Does that make sense? I'm just not too sure quite. If you could just explain the second question again in a bit more detail so what sort of thing do you mean, if you don't mind? Sorry.
Of course. In fact, I was very happy for you to just answer one now that the gates are open, and I'm happy to see the floor to the others as well. But my question was around this environment that you've created. When you explain to others the impact of this environment from a cumulative sense, you know what it does for the child.
Yes.
And you being a student yourself, you know what it does for the child. Parents know there's the self-selection of people coming in. But
Yes.
to an outsider, how would you perhaps quantify or qualify each of those inputs, like rules, each student having a vote, student voice, into this experience? Like, or do you even think about quantifying all this impact, or is it just like the conventional metrics of passing rates and exam results? I'm just curious how you think about that.
I don't know. We don't really sort of set anything too sort of strong about it, really. We do have values that we go by: the freedom, not license, the equality, the free play, the choice of whether to go to lessons or not, the meeting process, the wonderful and beautiful community life of everybody living together as equals, the wonderful relationships that happen. And the sincerity, the instinct, the people being the children and adults being very instinctual and being very free in that environment, not a place of anxiety. The freedoms that we talk about is also freedom from those anxieties and those pressures and bits and pieces like that. So really, that's kind of the overview of how we kind of look at the system, really. And then everybody's path going through that system is hugely individual and unique and wonderful and beautiful because it's unique and it celebrates that uniqueness to a certain extent. So I guess I'm not too sure if that quite explains. That gives a bit of an idea, really. But we don't necessarily, we haven't sort of thought about actually more recently we've been thinking we'd love to do some more research about it to get some of this down in some proper academic research. So really get it. There has been lots of lovely stuff being done already, but there is so much more that could be done, especially around those nuances. Those bits are the bits that are the good bit, but they're very difficult because as soon as you start to have people probing around to find out and asking questions, then So we've got there's lots and lots of lovely things on the ASNL Summerhill CIC website that I spoke about earlier. We do lots of stuff around research. We're connecting to lots of universities and we're building bridges, real good quality, solid bridges with people who really want to be doing looking at this in the right way, the real right way that it deserves, sort of thing. Because we've had a lot of people who come and sort of go, oh, I'll research that and ask if, this sort of very surface and not going very far. So watch this space. But that gives a bit of an idea. I will also say we're now building very soon we're going to be building something called the ASNL Archive and Research Centre. And it's for that reason to be able to again support. We've got the archive has been building. We've got some phenomenal information from the archive. A.S. Neil and Wilhelm Reich had a very, very close relationship. And there was a book that was released about letters and conversations between them. And obviously many other great thinkers actually, but specifically with them. And we've just recently found a huge pile of letters and documents that are about communication between those two that has never been released before. And so there's some really, and many other things. There's some amazingly powerful information that's gathering. So we're building that as well, again, to sort of help to solidify, to put more meat on the bone, as the expression says, around this, so that we can be getting more solidity to it.
Thanks, Henry. And I think there's a couple of questions, I think a little similar, in terms of just better understanding, like Alpin is asking, what do teachers need when they have only experienced traditional learning to be able to either deliver or engage with this reimagined education? And I think someone else who's watching us is asking, what advice would you give to teachers who are in a more conventional school setting? So maybe those two together, but just really what do we see teachers needing when maybe their own experience has been very traditional in terms of learning? What do they need in order to be able to do this?
Yeah, they I think Yeah, I guess a few things really. I think one thing that is first of all, you're a human being. So and so are all we, and all we want to do is create a more of a human being style relationship. So education. So you've got it in you anyway. It's all in there. Sometimes what has to happen is there might be some knots and things that need to be untied and massaged out a little bit, and then there needs to be a lot of what we say in the role of the adult course that we're now doing. We say that there needs to be a bit of a pause, quite a lot, occasional pause to think, wait, why am I actually doing this? What is it actually for? And what is the child going to get from this? Am I manipulating the child into learning something? Am I, what is it I'm actually doing? Am I putting my anxieties onto the child? Am I thinking, I'm really worried that you're not going to have a good enough education and get a good enough job and have better money. So am I then putting a lot of energy, putting a lot of things onto the child that maybe would be useful, but maybe at a later date, maybe, so in all circumstances, fundamentally, we like to have put that one on the table of just taking a little bit of a pause. And before I say this or before I do this, just look for a bit and think, wait, what are we actually talking about? I think also coming back to what I said, which is closer to the second part of the question of, building wonderful, sincere relationships. Really, really powerful, because that's yours. It's a gift that you can work on. You might find it quite difficult. Obviously, because depending on what challenges you've had in the past, what you're bringing to the equation, things like that might make it quite difficult. I know that when talking again about the Oasis movement in India, I know that fundamentally what they do is first of all, you've got to work on yourself. You've got to start understanding some of these things in yourself before you start educating children with them. Now, I know that's not always. I don't want to start saying that can be a big mountain to climb, and but I, to a certain extent, there really is something in that. We were doing the online course over the weekend, and there's a mother who, I won't say anything detailed about what, because for her privacy, really, but she was saying about a challenge that was happening with her daughter. And it was very interesting that almost as soon as she said it, and then she started to hear our response, you could almost see she was almost going, I already know what the answer, I already know what the answer was, but she was just doing it because of those anxieties as a mother. She was worried, which is beautiful and difficult sometimes. And so, yeah, so there can be a lot on that, I think. So I think it's really important to be thinking about those things of, when you're working with children, or when you're thinking about those next steps within educational, what are we actually thinking about? What is it for? Where are those things coming from within you? Are they coming from a place that is actually healthy for others, or is it coming from a place that actually it might be satisfying a little bit of what you think is right, but is it actually the best way forward, sort of thing? And I do think a little bit of perseverance. I think it can be a bit difficult sometimes. And I know, especially because of the struggles that people can be in and the situation they can be in, they can really, those situations can make you feel like it's a dead end. But it really isn't. It really, really isn't. And that is the absolute truth of the matter. It really, really isn't. There's, you are and you have got things core, absolutely foundational, that are seeds for this. But sometimes you have to dig a little bit deep, and you might have to work on it a bit deeper. And that's sort of part of it as well, I guess.
Would people like to share?
Anyone else got any questions? I've been very impressed at Ram. Your comments are amazing.
It's so good.
Oof, I have to say, woo. Yeah, you're reminding me of what I've just said. This is amazing. You can please send it to me afterwards, just so I can remind myself. Anyway, but if anyone has any questions, anything at all about Summerhill Life or about any other thoughts of your own work or anything, feel free to ask away. Well, I can see some tumbleweed. Yeah.
What we could possibly do is get.
Henry,
Oh, go for it.
can I? Ram, sorry, Henry, it's not a question, but I was actually in the audience listening to you when you were in India at that little function that Oasis organized. And my colleague and I, Kritika, who's also on this call, and we were like fondly remembering at that time, we were just conceptualizing what became the kids' education revolution, and you had a profound impact on us. But one thing that I distinctly remember was a little story you told about the trampoline and yourself. And I don't know if you recall that story, but if you do, my request is just to share it with the group because it was so beautiful.
Yes, I can. I'm very happy to share that. The trampoline story has become quite famous. How lovely that you were there. Really, that means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Really lovely. And lovely to introduce yourself. Really lovely. It was a wonderful trip. It was a really wonderful trip. Yeah, it was amazing. So the trampoline story, yes. Now, the slight problem with the trampoline story is it's sometimes got a bit of activity, and I normally jump around like a nutcase. And when you're on a stage or when you're doing it in that situation, it's a bit easier. Doing it online is not so easy, but I can give it a go and we'll see how we get on. So this was really explaining about the meeting process, the equality. It's sort of bringing everything together, really, at Summerhill, but it talks a lot about the meeting process and how that works. So, as I explained earlier, we have two laws, the trampoline. One, you're not allowed to wear shoes, and one is you're allowed to be on the trampoline for as long as you want, but if someone else comes along, you have to wait for, you can be on there for 5 more minutes and you have to get off and let someone else have a go. Now, so one day I was on the trampoline, obviously, 46 years old, and deputy principal of Summerhill School, a very responsible role with taking on a lot of responsibilities. And so one day I was on the trampoline, bouncing up and down. I can do it a little bit. You get the gist. Being my average 46-year-old 4-year-old. And this a 6-year-old girl came up to the trampoline. And she said, "Henry, you only have 5 minutes left." So I was a little bit disappointed at the Summerhill philosophy of equality, thinking I'm actually the deputy principal at Summerhill School here. I should definitely be able to, have more rights than a 6-year-old. I mean, come on. So carried on jumping up and down. And she then said, "Henry," looking at her watch. No, she wasn't looking at what she was looking at her phone, obviously. Sorry. "Henry, you have 4 minutes left." Yeah. I was thinking, yeah, all right, okay. Carried on for a little bit more, jumping up and down, doing my thing. She said, "Henry, you now only have 3 minutes left." Slightly relishing in taking my freedoms away. She's quite enjoying it a little. You could see she has, "You only have 3. Went down even more. 2 minutes, Henry. You only have 2 minutes left. Got to the end of the time. She said, "Right, Henry, that's it. You're out of time now. Get off." And I went, it feels so silly every time I do this. And so So I thought I'd take over and break the law and say, no, stand up for my rights against this 6-year-old. So she said, right, I said, Henry, I'm going to go and get an ombudsman. So she went off and get an ombudsman. An ombudsman is one of the older children of the school who are there to help solve conflicts. If there's a problem, you go to an ombudsman and they'll come and help you. So she went and got this boy. She was walking down here and she was holding his hand like that. He was quite big. He was quite big. And he said, Henry. He said, Henry, get off the trampoline. Look, come on, it's her go now. Just get off the trampoline. And it was actually more like that. He's like, oh, Henry, get off the trampoline like that. I went, 46, everybody. I know you're all thinking, no, you can't be. You can't be 46. I'm 46. I'm 46. And the deputy principal of an international boarding school. Who would have thought? Anyway, so she then took me to the meeting. She said, right, I'm going to bring you up in the meeting. And she then took me to the meeting. So she got a case in the meeting. She waited her turn. The chairperson said, yeah, your turn. And she said, I'm bringing up Henry because he broke the trampoline law. She explained the situation. I said it wasn't me. And obviously that didn't stand very well. They all just basically said, Henry, shut up, Henry. Oh, shut up, Henry. And I got a 24-hour trampoline ban, meaning that I'm not allowed to go on the trampoline for 24 hours. Yep. So that's about the story of that.
I think it's an incredible story, Henry, and I think it captures a lot of the joy actually that you shared for education today. So thank you so much on behalf of all of us for spending this time with us today and sharing with so much joy, like your work and your thoughts. And I feel like all of us are going to take away so many like just moments of what it means to really honor children and honor childhood through our work. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you all very much. And I'm sorry that I had a little bit of silliness at the end there, but you know, what can we do?
We loved it.
A bit of silliness, nothing wrong with it. Yeah, no, really lovely. Lovely to meet you all, and good luck on your journeys with everything. You know, obviously with the ASNL Summerhill CIC, we're doing lots of lovely work. We're wanting to build bridges. I've already spoken a bit with Ram about this as well. We're really wanting to build bridges. It looks like there's a possibility I'll be coming to India in September. And anyway, just keep an eye, you know, and good luck with everything. Hope everything goes well. And yeah, thank you all very much.